Welcome to the Humanity Mosaic podcast, exploring authenticity and connection with Dr. E. Thank you for joining us today as we explore issues that affect our relationships in today's world. And now welcome to today's episode with Dr. E.
I am Deborah Threadgill-Egerton, and this is...
I'm Rebecca Campbell.
And we're having a lovely visit with each other this weekend, and we thought we would sit down and talk about some things and share them with you. Yeah.
We kind of wanted to interview each other, but then we're like, that just seems not kind of intimate enough. And there's just so many shared threads that I know so many women and humans are feeling right now, and so we just wanted to talk about that.
Absolutely. You know, the topic came up over and over again while we were together this weekend about where women are right now, at this moment of time in the world, and how we are feeling about, well, different things that are happening in the world, how we're feeling about the role that we step into. And we have so many roles, we wear so many hats, and our spiritual journey. You know, how do we maintain that in light of all of the things that we are called upon to do and be in the world? I know that, Rebecca, you're in the season of motherhood right now.
Yeah, I've got two very young kids, like almost 5 and almost 2. Yeah,
I remember that.
Oh my gosh, yeah, you've been an amazing guide for me. Whoa, yeah, and I'm also I'm a mum who I never knew if I wanted to be a mum or not. So it wasn't this thing where it was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do. I was definitely afraid of it, because I see the pressure on mother. And how, because our society is so bereft of the goddess, of the feminine, of seeing the earth as the feminine, as sacred, we've been taught to turn against each other and to look towards mother as this like one person who just doesn't have the support and needs to be all the things at home. But, you know, like I've got a big calling in the world, and that was something I was certain of from a very young age. And to be honest, I avoided motherhood as long as I possibly could, because I was petrified that I wouldn't be able to fulfill my purpose, which was my number one priority.
So not only can I relate to that, but I look at the way that lands across generations. So I'm in the season of my life where I'm a grandmother, and I look at my grandchildren coming up now, but I can reflect back to being a mother, and you had your children later in life, and I had mine very early, because I actually came through at a time where, you know, you got married and you had kids. But like you, I knew that I had a very big calling on my life, and I also did not know whether or not I wanted to be a mother. But the funny thing was, during that time, even things like birth control weren't as easily accessible or explainable and what have you. And so I got married and I got pregnant. And then the next thing I knew, you know, I had 2 more children. But looking at how sometimes life happens, it just happens to you, and then what do? You learn how to go with it. But something that we can bring to the world now is the reality that even when life happens, it often happens for your good. And if you tune in, particularly, you know, to spirit, and pay attention to what's being said to you, then it will show you a good road, a way to be able to do all the things that you thought you were going to do in the world. And I see that happening over and over and over again. I see it with you. I see it with so many others that we work with. We have this opportunity to step into our calling and What I believe now is that a lot of women are waking up and feeling something inside about this divine feminine energy that we embody and want to know what to do with it.
It's so true. It's like, I know just last night, because we've been part of why I'm away from my kids right now. I've just been teaching at the Omega Institute, and so like my time away from my family is really precious, but I've definitely been called for you and I to spend time together, because we feel this call in our hearts and we want to gather with women. And even, you know, we can teach workshops very easily, and finding the material is no issue. It's straightforward. We could do it with our eyes closed. But there was something about what we're being called to do collectively that demanded this attention, you know? And I think when we were feeling into, like, what do we call our workshop or whatever we end up doing, and we're in the seed stage, and so maybe you're watching this and it'll be something completely different by then. But when we were trying to find these names for, like, divine feminine, or, you know, I got a book, Rise Sister Rise, and you will have your own way of saying the feminine is rising, but we were just like, it for now, that doesn't encapsulate it. Like, what would be the call for us? And between us, we kind of said it at the same time. It's not about the divine feminine rising. It's that she has risen.
Exactly.
Oh, and this is it. It's like the times have changed, and I know that there are, in different places in the world, in varying degrees, it's not the same, but there's something, and I saw it me teaching last week. We think that this call that we have within our heart, which I call the Great Mother Awakening, it's the feminine rising, returning to the earth. We it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, that calling is way too big, and turn on the news and be like, what could I possibly do? How could I possibly? And I saw it over and over again, women, and I relate myself, I don't know if you do too, the call feels way too big. And it's because it is too big. And because we've been taught to see ourselves as separate from one another, and to turn against each other rather than towards each other. And then you get overwhelmed and you think, how could I possibly do that? But this is different.
Yeah, this is very different. And, you know, I don't think it was a coincidence, because, you know, we don't believe in coincidences, but you're at Omega Institute having that experience. I'm at Chautauqua Institute at the same time, speaking, having the same experience, and recognizing that what we're doing is we're actually activating and galvanizing particularly women, but we're bringing in, calling in the divine feminine energy of the world. You know, it's not just like you have to identify as a woman to be aware of this energy.
No, 100%.
We all have it. And I was speaking to men and women of all ages, and I could feel the power of my words going out and landing in a way where I could actually see people like lighting up. They were receiving it. They were understanding the message. They were understanding that we matter. What we do as individuals really matters. Because, as I say all the time, the health of our individual energy manifests in the world, and it creates the cumulative energy. And if the world is going to heal, if the planet is going to heal, if we are going to elevate our consciousness as human beings, if the species is going to evolve, then we have to be able to do the work on ourselves. We have to be able to show up healthy and show up in a way where we care about each other. And I love what you just said, because you called it out, particularly women turning against each other. I grew up in a time where it was pretty common for a woman to get married, have children, and be a homemaker. That's what I watched my mother do. But I knew that was not what I wanted to do. And so I took another road. But from the time that I began to go down that road to present day, it's still controversial as to what road a woman takes. You know, sometimes working moms are put in a position where they are sort of shamed for not giving enough time and attention to their children. And of course, moms who stay home and do the hardest job that any human can ever do, raise the children, are shamed because they're not considered to be actually making their contribution to the world. There should be no such thing as shaming one another as women for whatever road, whatever path we are called to. We have to follow our path. And the mom who is staying home and raising beautiful human beings to become wonderful contributors in the world and to be decent people. I say all the time, it's really funny. I feel like my calling now is just to help people to understand we need to go back to a reality of being kind to one another, to being compassionate, to being decent human beings, you know, and to really love each other and respect each other and to lift each other up. And if we can do that, then everything around us will shift for the better. Just kindness and compassion and empathy.
And so let's talk about that, and because you are such an activist and you, from my perspective, feel comfortable in that area, and maybe that perception's not accurate, but that's how I see you. For me, with social media and division and all of that, I just see so much blaming and shaming, and you're not doing it right, and if you stand for this, you have to do it exactly like this. And for me, that's something that stops me because I'm afraid. And it also, I've got so much grief around that as well, because I just see us turning against each other, and people, not just women, being cautious about how they show up. Like they feel that mother roar within them, and they feel the call to hold their healing thread for humanity, but they're afraid of not doing it the right way. And so then I think it stops action.
It does. Yeah. Shame, fear, blame, guilt. I say those are the four bullies. They're absolutely paralytics. They stop you in your tracks. You will not do something if you're afraid. You will not do something if you are going to be shamed for it. You're not going to do something if you are blaming someone for an action that you take not going the way you wanted it to go. And if you feel this burden of guilt, it's too heavy to go out into the world and do something, which is why it's so important that we come together and we do some healing work, you know, that we really explore what stops us from, I'm an Enneagram 0.1 person, and I always say, how hard is it to do the right thing? But sometimes it's really hard to do the right thing because the right thing isn't always the common path. Sometimes the right thing is the narrow road, and people are afraid of how they're going to be viewed for taking that path, for actually extending themselves to someone who is hurting or who needs just, you know, a loving touch or a moment of kindness. And yet the divisions in the world tell you who you can be kind to and who you can't be kind to, who you can accept and who you have to reject. That's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Crazy. It's crazy. And I honestly believe, Rebecca, that as women, that's not who we are. We are not designed, we were not created to divide and separate. You know, we're the ones that actually were the gatherers. We bring everyone in close. Everyone. And it's the energy of the divine feminine that is inclusive, that is warm, that is embracing. That's who we are.
It's so true. And I think this is why, like, your work with the Enneagram is so powerful. And I've had amazing other teachers along the way, like Holly Holden, our friend, who she sits at 0.4 like me, so we kind of compare notes, and she's taught me a lot as well. And what I've come to know as someone being at 0.4, shame is what I need to watch out for. And recently, and I think something happened, and I reached out to you, and I reached out to a couple of other friends saying, this happened, I'm about to go into shame. I'm not there, but I could easily go there. I can feel the spiral coming. And I remember you were like, baby girl, and did a voice note to me, which like really helped me stay up. And my friend Kyle did a meditation. And then I had another friend, Megan, who said to me, shame is a tool of the patriarchy. And the people coming together, and I know Kyle's not a woman, but he's in the feminine. But the gathering of the force field of that, but the knowledge of knowing the quality that takes us down. And I'm sure you have a different one than me, or maybe what's yours?
Yeah, mine is actually the fear and the anger that rises, particularly if I get it wrong. So what paralyzes me is I want to do the right thing, but at what cost? So to make a mistake and to take a stand and make a mistake, and then I may cause more harm than I do create good, that's the thing that I have to just recognize that, you know, when Spirit speaks to me and says go, I need to be comfortable and confident enough to know that in my language, Holy Spirit has never guided me wrong. And it is my human nature that if I start to overthink it, or I try to rework the message that I've been given, if I try to interpret it in a different way, that's when it just sort of begins to fall apart. And then I'm angry and I'm fearful and I'm depressed, literally. You know, because you and I, we're not teaching the Enneagram now, but we have a line to each other. And so I go over to where you...
And because you're 0.1.
And I go to 0.4 under stress, but I don't go to a healthy level of 4, I go to the unhealthy level. And, you know, there's a deep melancholy and sadness and fear that literally whatever I have done has caused me to be a corrupt, evil, and bad person.
Wow.
And so
it's amazing how we can just get to that so quick. I've done something wrong, I'm bad, or whatever.
Exactly.
And so when you feel that, is it like a spiral or a drop, or how, like, what happens for you?
Oh, it's a drop.
It's a drop. So it's almost like boom.
It's a
and
drop.
so when you drop, or you can feel the drop coming, what do you do?
When I feel that coming, you know, it's interesting, because if I'm on that elevator and nobody else is pushing any buttons, I'm going straight down. But once I begin to descend, there's a point where my heart, and this is really, really powerful, and I hope that everyone can understand this. We have 3 centers of intelligence. There's what my head thinks, there's what my heart feels and knows, and there's my intuitive center, my gut. I can feel my gut just starting to freak out. You know, I know where I'm going. I'm going down, and I'm going down hard. And my heart literally just begins to burst now with compassion for what's happening. my heart is actually speaking to me and saying, you've been here before. You don't need to go there again. You are loved and you are love. You know, you have done all that you know to do. And then my brain begins to say, you don't have to do it this way. It says, rise, sister, rise. It literally says, rise, sister, rise. Come back up, you know. And and if I use the elevator analogy, it's like it screeches to a halt. I don't go all the way to the bottom, you know. And so then I have to move into, for me, interestingly enough, it's music. I have music that, you know, I'll put on CeCe Winans or Yolanda Adams or the prayer cycle, and I'll just sit and meditate and listen to the words and feel into the music, and I'll begin to breathe, and I'll feel the creative energy beginning to flow through me again. And then I recognize that I'm being held, and I have a vision of actually being lifted back up energetically by the angels. And so it's wonderful to have lived long enough and to have experienced being on that elevator going down
enough times. Yeah, you gotta know, like, see the pattern, feel the pattern, and like know the cost.
Exactly.
Like, yeah.
And the cost is a big one.
That's the thing, and the thing that happened to me recently, I recognized the takedown, and it's me who was letting it happen,
right.
And I knew how long it literally took me about 6 years to recover from the previous, and I was like, this is not happening. And I love that you mentioned like music, because I've discovered for me it's music, but body. I gotta stay in my body and not let it go to the depths, because if it goes to the depths, it's like almost like part of my soul leaves. And so what I kept on imagining, I kept on looking in the mirror, and it was like about 24 hours where I could have gone, you know, it could have taken me. So I texted my inner crew. I outed myself for my pattern. Said no, but there was a galvanization of energy, as in like, this is not going to happen. The depth of the mother power rose up, and I looked at myself in the mirror. I was at the theater, actually went and saw, it was perfect. It was, what's that show that we both have seen? Hades Town. So it was perfect for a fall, because I was literally going down to Hades Town. But it was always like at Hades Town, I was like, yes, I am gonna come back up. And so it was like a musical theater performance of my inner world. And while I was literally at the theater, I went into the bathroom more times than I needed to, and there were so many people around. I kept on pretending I was like doing my lips, but what I was doing was I looked at myself in the mirror long enough, and I'm like, come back. Like I called and demanded my power and my soul to stay here, to occupy every cell. And I put on music. I've got a couple of tracks that I listen to, which are like quite empowering music, but I just let my body move in ways that it needed to move, which was a lot around like the heart. And I noticed it was like grief, but it transformed into power and compassion for this other person. And genuine compassion. I am blown away by how deep my love for that other person is, and that would have taken me a decade to get there previously.
See, that's the point. There is no force that is more powerful than love.
Yes.
And compassion is a branch of love. All right. So whenever put in a situation where someone is trying to cancel you, someone is trying to call you out, they're trying to shame you, instead of allowing anything that would paralyze you to win, if you can move into a loving space for that person, and this is a very difficult concept for people to grasp, and even more difficult to live into it. But it is the power of love that, first of all, shifts your own perspective. If your perspective on it shifts, then that means the actions that you take are going to be different from the actions that you would take that are fear-based. If you take a love-based position around someone who is coming for you, literally coming for you, you are actually protecting yourself, because that part of your soul that you feel like tries to flee, it doesn't. It stays with you. It stays. And the power, just like as you were going into the restroom and looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, you are not going to go there. When you are doing that, what you were doing was remaining present to yourself, staying in your body, keeping all parts of you together. And that's what love does. Because love is a great unifier. Not only does it unify externally, it unifies internally. So if you can, and sometimes the people who do the worst things to you, or the worst actions are going in your direction, the most powerful thing you can do is to, in my way of saying it, in my language, is to extend not only positive energy towards them, but to pray for them. You know, just add that person to, you know, my little prayer. I have a couple of them, but one of them is, if I realize someone really has placed a target on my back, I'll say, I wish you well, I wish you love, I wish you happiness, and may you have all of that away from me. So it is,
because there's a power piece, because I think sometimes when we hear love, compassion towards enemies and all of that, there's this, it feels like watery and like it's all fine, you know, and we know how hard forgiveness is, but there's this piece of around personal power, isn't it?
There is. It really is. And we have,
which is what sacred rage actually is.
Yes. And it's a hard concept for people to grasp, because sometimes you are dealing with a human who has violated you in some way, where forgiveness doesn't even feel like it's a possibility. Forgiveness is a gift that you give to yourself, because once you have been violated by someone, the idea of having to forgive that person is a very difficult thing to do. But you forgive for yourself, so that you can be free of the hold.
You're freeing yourself from that.
And that's why you move into, I wish you well. I wish you love, I wish you happiness, I wish you joy, but away from me.
But away from me.
But away from me. Maintaining your healthy boundaries is a very important thing to do. And when you're actually wishing someone well who has harmed you in some way, what you're actually doing is contributing once again to the collective energy of hoping that someone who is wounded and someone who would continue to do harm, you're actually hoping that they have some sort of a healing experience. You don't need to have line of sight to it. You don't need to be part of it. But it's just like when women agree to go to court and to testify in a rape case, and they so very often don't want to. Nobody wants to relive that experience. But sometimes what motivates them to do it is, I want to shut this person down from doing it to anyone else. So when we say, I wish you well, I wish you healed, I wish you whole, I wish you happiness, what you're doing is you are actually trying to call in some healing for that person, so that they don't continue to wound, to harm,
That's a
to
really
violate.
great.
You know, and then you forgive for yourself, just so that you can heal and not let whatever it was that happened have a hold on you for the rest of your life. You know,
and because I think, so depending on what happens to people, there's obviously so many different expressions of it, but in some instances, like the division that is rampant everywhere is almost like it's like trying to dampen the light or dampen the whatever it is. One thing I've started doing more is, because there is the, I'm going to dim my light, I'll retreat. But that's definitely not what's needed now. And so I've been imagining myself in this like golden egg. As you know, gold is very up for me right now. Where you love your gold, sisters of the gold. But yeah, I imagine myself in this sacred egg, which is essentially like my sacred space, but it's almost like this cosmic egg that like I was in when I came here, and maybe even before. I imagine being connected to light, source, Christ light, whatever you want to call it, but also the waters of the earth, like right in the center, waters of the mother, waters of the womb, sourcing from there, light in the center of the heart, and then that golden glow just occupying the space and emanating out, and with this like really fine cloth around it, so it's like only good can enter, and that like praying that it be transmuted with that. That's really helped me as well, because it's felt like it's like it comes, it cultivates the power within, not like, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that you bring that up, because visual imagery is very powerful. You know, what you see yourself in, what you experience, the energy that you're experiencing, if you can close your eyes and breathe into that image. I have one that has been with me throughout my life, and literally when I close my eyes, whether it is Jesus or whether it is my guardian angel, sometimes it's Mother Mary, sometimes it's Mary Magdalene, but there's a motion that they are doing where it's just soothing me.
Oh, that's so nice. I might borrow that one.
Yeah, it's just, and it's.
We should do that in our workshop together.
Yes, we will.
That's a good exercise.
And then, you know, the Holy Spirit is often depicted as a dove, and I will see when I'm troubled, and I feel like I'm not being understood, or no one is really there for me in that moment. I have a vision of the Holy Spirit that literally descends with an enormous wingspan and wraps the wings around me and just holds me in that space. And it's just, it is the imagery that allows me to realize that there's something beyond this realm, that whatever is happening to me in this realm is also known and seen and recognized in the spiritual realm, and that it can be healed from that place as well, because that's where I really draw my comfort. That's where I'm calm, I'm soothed, I'm listening to the message that says, this too shall pass. You know, all will be well again. You know, rest, my child. I get that one a lot. Rest, my child. Rest. You know. So those things are, well, they're things that we want to share, particularly with anyone who has awakened and she is risen within you, and now it's, what do I do with this? It's I feel like I must do something. I no longer want to be silent, but what do I do? What do I do?
Yeah.
And if we can be guides and be the ones who begin to gather the women in, gather the divine feminine. Like I say, it's not just women, it is the divine feminine energy that is activating and that is really, it's not quiet.
No,
It's
it
not
is
a quiet energy.
stirring in the hearts and minds and bodies, and I think it, like the grief. We know grief is evidence of how much we love, and it's impossible to not feel that if your heart's open right now. And but then it's like, how can we, even just with the frustration and the rage that I know many of us are feeling, like we can either use it to create or destruct.
Exactly. Well, and that is one of the primary reasons that I put as much time into teaching the Enneagram as I do. It is to help every human to understand their energetic makeup, to understand what their dominant energy is, and to be able to recognize when that energy is becoming unhealthy. You know, if you can understand and you are aware that you have an energy, an archetype that is something you were born with and something that helps you to navigate the world, but it's healthy energy, average energy, or unhealthy. Average is where most of us live most of the time, but when our energy starts becoming unhealthy, once again, this is added to the collective energy of the world. And this is what makes such a difference in terms of how we show up in the world, and whether or not we are able to evolve and become stronger. And particularly, I think of the little ones. You know, Goldie comes to mind right now. And do we really not want to do everything that we can to make sure that these beautiful babies that are being born with their eyes wide open and that are looking at us and saying, what are you all doing? Do we really not want to heal some of these divides so that they can live in a more peaceful world? Who doesn't want that for anyone who, you know, doesn't have choice about who they're born to, doesn't have choice about what neighborhood they're going to live in, what access to education they're going to have, you know, who doesn't have the power to create their own environment. And we're the ones that are creating the energetic environment of the world. So
and destroying the physical.
Yes. So
and I believe a big part of it is because we've been bereft of the feminine, and we have stopped seeing the earth as our mother who so abundantly gives. And we, because of that, like, we've been looking towards one woman to embody the feminine, the mother,
everything,
and they're just set up to fail.
That is a really profoundly sad, really, you know, concept that this one woman will be able to do it all. But united.
Because we all ache for it.
Yes.
To return to it, to return to each other.
But in order to return to each other, we have to learn to love each other. And we have to shake off this whole notion of we are not connected, because we are. And we inherit that disconnection too. We do. In the cells. Yes, it lives on. We pass it on. And a really important thing for us to remember is that everything matters. You each little act of kindness or lack of kindness matters, because the cumulative effect of the small things is what creates the large thing that we live in. And when I think about women and men, non-binary humans, all of whom may or may not have been the recipients of a mother's love. A mother's love is sort of the foundational part of your evolution. And if your own mother didn't mother you in the way that you would have liked to have been mothered, it doesn't mean that you have to go on feeling lost or motherless or unloved throughout the rest of your life. There is a way to heal, but you have to take the time to do that healing work and come together with other people who need to do that healing work. And the energy of love lives in our bodies, but the energy of pain, of unkind acts, of violation, trauma, as it's called, lives in our bodies as well.
Yeah.
And we actually can do work to get rid of that. We don't have to live in pain. We should actually live just the opposite. We should live in love, and we should live in joy, and we should live being comfortable, but also a little bit uncomfortable, so that we're willing to go outside of our comfort zones to continue to grow.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think that is what so many people are feeling right now, this call to not only rise, but to already be risen and now be like, right, what do we need to do?
Right. Well, maybe we can help them.
Well, yeah, come join us.
Join us.
Be part of it. We are all doing it together, and I think that is our intention, isn't it? To hold a space for us all together, for us all to come together and turn back towards each other.
Right.
Yeah.
She has risen. So let's gather.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on today's episode of the Humanity Mosaic podcast with Dr. E. For more information, please visit deboraheggerton.com and be sure to check out theauthenticselfcommunity.com to continue your journey.